Welcome, everybody, to this gubernatorial forum with Bob Stefanowski, Republican candidate for governor, and Ned Lamont, Democratic candidate for governor. This is the first of 5 candidate forums JFAC will be hosting over the next few weeks. My name is Michael Bloom, and I am the proud executive director of the Jewish Federation Association of Connecticut. We are an advocacy organization which lobbies city, state, and federal officials on issues of importance to the 7 Jewish federations and their beneficiary agencies across Connecticut. Tonight's forum will focus on issues that are critical to the Jewish community and are sponsored by all 7 Jewish federations across Connecticut. For those tuning in, we are recording this, and we will post this to our website, jfact.org, jfact.org. Jewish federations will also have the ability to post it as well. If you would like to ask a question, please put it in the chat and we will try to get to it. Since this is a forum and not a debate, each candidate will have roughly 25 or so minutes with our community by themselves, for which we are appreciative. Up first is Bob Stefanowski. Welcome, Bob. Please take a few minutes to make an opening statement, and then we will begin with the Q&A.
Well, great. Thank you all for having me and taking the time to spend with me. I really appreciate it. I did recently have a great experience with the New Haven group with Judy Alprin, who I believe has moved on now, which is unfortunate for Connecticut. But we teamed up to form a charity called Mass for CT. Early on in the pandemic, we were able to source surgical masks from a broker down in New Jersey, and my wife and I paid for the first few $100,000, and then we set up a charity with Judy and her team. And if any of those people are on, I just want to thank you again. What a terrific, welcoming organization you have, and we ended up handing out about 1.5 million surgical masks across the state. Probably one of the best experiences I and my wife have had, and really enjoyed working with that chapter. Just very quickly, because I know we only have 25 minutes, we're really focused on 3 things. There's a lot of things, in my opinion, that we need to do better in Connecticut, but certainly affordability, the price to be here. We've got the 2nd highest taxes in the nation. We have the highest utility costs in the U.S. The federal statistics just came out that we had in the 2nd quarter of 2022 the lowest economic growth and the lowest personal income growth in the entire country. And I think what we've been trying as a state for the last few years hasn't worked. We've implemented a plan called Connecticut First: Fight Inflation and Reduce Taxes, things like reducing the sales tax, giving people back the deduction for their property taxes, getting businesses what they need to lower the tax rate, actually pushing back on the utility companies and make sure that they're paid on a performance basis and that our bills are reasonable. So these are all things we can do, I think, with a new approach. The second is public safety. You can look at whatever statistics you want. When I go around the state every single day, people don't feel safer than they were 4 years ago. I think we need to reinforce law enforcement. We need to protect people from the bad actors, the bad police people that are doing the wrong thing. But in my opinion, that's the minority. And for the 99% of officers that are doing the right thing, this police accountability bill that Governor Lamont signed last year has absolutely decimated police forces across the state. The state troopers gave the administration a 97% vote of no confidence. So we need to get back on the right track there. And finally, I call the 4th bucket, which is the 3rd bucket, let parents be parents. I grew up in New Haven on Dixwell Avenue. I went to the public schools, and I led a lot of these sensitive issues. They were talked about at the kitchen table. I don't think we should be like other states and teaching things like sex education to kindergartners. I don't think they have the capacity to understand it. We need to have schools focus on reading, writing, arithmetic, the trades. I do think school funding should follow the child, whether that's a religious school or a public school or a charter school or a magnet school. I don't think students should be trapped into bad school systems based upon the zip code they live in. I think we should provide that flexibility. I started my career at a Christian school, and it was great. My parents, unfortunately, couldn't afford to continue it, and we ended up moving to North Haven for better public schools. So I think there's a lot we can do. I would love to work with this organization. I've got experience working with the New Haven chapter, and I look forward to collaborating with all of you, but I want to make sure I leave enough time for questions.
No, appreciate that. One, yes, Judy Alpern, unfortunately, leaving the New Haven Federation is a loss to New Haven and frankly, JFAC and the Jewish community in general. You beat me to the punch. The first question was, explain 3 policy implementations you would like. So you got that out of the way. The well-documented rise in anti-Semitism is the biggest issue impacting the Jewish community. Incidents are occurring daily across the state and this country. Hate groups have leafleted several towns in Connecticut over the last recent months. At least 3 anti-Semitic incidents were reported on American college campuses during Rosh Hashanah last week, and that unfortunately doesn't include one that happened last week to a local college here. What would your administration do to help combat anti-Semitism in the state of Connecticut?
Well, first of all, it's horrible that in this day and age that is the trend. I think a lot of it starts at the top with the right leadership, and we should have absolutely zero tolerance for any form of discrimination. There's several anti-discrimination lawsuits being filed at the state level right now. We should resolve them. We should get the results out there. We shouldn't delay them till after the election because it's expedient. We should get the results of those out there and known. I probably shouldn't admit it, but one of my oldest daughter went to UC Berkeley, and I am absolutely shocked at what's going on out there. I would never, especially from that university, which when my daughter went there 8 years ago, it was all about understanding different viewpoints and different people and being tolerant of that. I haven't looked into it deeply. I just saw it today, but it's absolutely amazing to me that it's happening in today's day and age. So I've got zero tolerance for it. It's not right. I don't know, and it'd be great if we can ever get together, because I do think we're going to win. After we win, I'd love to get together. I don't know how much of it is conscious versus unconscious bias. One of the best courses I ever took was on unconscious bias, and people think that they aren't biased, but they really are. And clearly the hate crimes that are happening, that's conscious bias, and we need to prevent that and clamp down on it and put these stupid people in jail if we have to get them to stop. But I also think we should work on unconscious bias because I think it's more prevalent than we think. I think people need to be more sensitive to it. I'd like to provide that training for people in government after I win and really make people more sensitive, because I'm just amazed that the level is that's still here today. It's unacceptable, and we're going to do everything we possibly can to get rid of it.
That's great to hear, because and certainly you referencing UC Berkeley it is it's gross, quite frankly, what they're doing there. So thank you for
Sure.
those comments. As a result, unfortunately, in this rise in hate and attacks on houses of worship specifically, one of the ways for our community to feel safer is to increase security for our synagogues, our Jewish day schools, and our Jewish community centers. A few years ago, JFAC advocated, actually along with leaders in the Muslim community, for the creation of a statewide nonprofit security grant program. To date, $10 million has been dedicated to that program. Would your administration fund additional dollars for this statewide nonprofit security grant program to help increase our security measures?
I think it should be a multiple of that number. We are fortunate right now in Connecticut to have a large budget surplus, about $6 billion with a B. That's largely because we got $6 billion from the federal government, but I don't think we should be sitting on all of that. We should use some of it. And I use this analogy when I talk about schools or churches and synagogues absolutely fall into that category. If you think about a typical bank, you walk in, there's security cameras, there's bulletproof glass, there's all of this technology that can be used. You go to a museum, and then you think about churches, synagogues, schools. These are our most precious assets. These are our people. Whether it's, I noticed it when we went up to the Jewish Federation of Greater New Haven. and they have security, but the building is relatively old. We should be investing 10, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in security. Why don't people have teachers in schools have panic buttons? Why don't we have the cameras that we need? There is so much technology out there that we could be bringing to bear. And, thank God, in the last several years, nothing bad has happened. But if we end up sitting on $6 billion and I don't want to be kicking ourselves a year down the road that we could have done more. And again, I would love to work with your group, figure out what we need to solidify. We should be providing that money, and we should be doing it today. And I can commit to you that my first day on the job, one of the things I'm going to be focused on is building security, whether it's synagogues, churches, schools, you name it. We have to be laser focused on that.
Thank you. And certainly goes without question that would be happy to work with you. There is no doubt, and you referred to this in some of your previous comments, there is no doubt that education, specifically Holocaust education, is key to combating anti-Semitism. However, we are currently living in a hyper-politicized climate where topics like Holocaust education are being deemed controversial. For example, there's a Texas law currently that requires teachers to teach the opposing sides of a particular issue, of historical events, which would include the Holocaust. What would your administration do to get more Holocaust education in front of the next generation of leaders?
I think it's incredibly important for people, not necessarily today's kids to feel guilty about it, but to be aware of it and to be aware that it could happen again. And this is not ancient history. This is relatively recent when you think of the duration of the earth. I also think kids should be exposed to more. When we moved to London, we lived in London about 6 years, and we went over and everybody said, you got to go to the American school in London. They've got all these big donors and the gym is beautiful. And we intentionally put our kids in an inner city school in Olympia because there was diversity. There were a lot of kids from India there, and they learned about some of the different languages, and the holiday schedule was different. And they just realized that it's a broader world out there. So we have to teach kids about these types of issues to prevent it from happening again, to understand that some people have had hurdles that they haven't had. I remember one particular time my daughter came home crying because she was excluded from a birthday party. And she said, in the US, everybody goes to the kid's birthday party. Well, you know what, Megan? Here, they can't afford to send everybody to the birthday party. So they had to make some tough choices. And I'm very concerned. I get a fair amount of criticism. You're just a rich white guy. You don't know what people are going through. I try to surround myself with people from diversity. We have to teach these things. Our classes need to be more diverse. That's why I sent my kids there. And I think the more we can understand about the struggles that the different nationalities went through coming here, the better off we're going to be. And I think the more tolerant isn't the right word, the more empathetic we're going to be. And the more we're going to be able to prevent it from ever happening. And quite honestly, I'm worried about the direction both of the US and of Connecticut. And I fundamentally believe we got to rebuild this country from the bottom up. And I'm going to do the right thing, whether you guys vote for me or not. When I'm governor, I'm going to protect as many people as I can. I'm going to support people that vote for me and people that vote for Governor Lamont. That's your choice. I work for you. I need to listen to what you need me to do, and we need to deliver. And that's what we're going to do.
Connecticut, actually, I want to go to one question. One question is Governor Lamont, to his credit, appointed a hate crimes advisory council. And I was appointed to that for transparency's sake. We actually just submitted our final report to the governor. We hope those recommendations will get turned into legislation. To be honest, I'm not sure if this is something that's going to continue. I believe it is, but would a Stefanowski administration continue this hate crimes advisory council?
Absolutely. If we need to double it, let me know. If we need to add more funding to it, let me know. And hate crimes are one of the worst things. It's just a horrible statement on the people of Connecticut, and even worse, it's a tragedy for the people that are impacted, particularly when it's directed at kids. And some kids, they'll never get over that. I mean, we can mentor and we can help, but anything, anything I can do within my powers to help reduce hate crimes, I'm all for it.
Thank you. One last question on some of the anti-Semitism. You referred to, we brought up colleges. Sorry, moving around here. We are seeing anti-Semitism on college campuses. Sometimes, many times, comes in the form of anti-Israelism, and Jewish students are sometimes hesitant because of their support of Israel. I will say we are seeing it less. We are seeing it a little bit in Connecticut, but what would your administration do to make Jewish college students feel safer on campus, certainly while still protecting free speech, while protecting free speech?
Well, in the public schools, which I can directly influence, the UConns of the world, forget it, end of story, it doesn't happen. Anybody responsible for it is out. In a private school, it's a little bit harder, but I do want to keep a close eye on it. I do think we can beef up security, even in some of the private schools. I think a lot of it, I shouldn't say a lot of it, but some of it, I think you have to be very careful with the faculty. Our faculty should be teaching kids how to think, not what to think. And I think and I'm not pinning this on Connecticut. I think there's been an overall theme in government getting between a parent and their kid. I want my kids to be open. I had one daughter went to UC Berkeley, one went to Cornell, and one is out at UC Santa Barbara. And they couldn't be more difficult schools. But they all came out learning how to speak, how to think. And that's what's important. To the extent there's any instances of that not being the case, we got to clamp down on it. I'll use all the powers of the governorship to do it.
Currently, switching topics, currently Connecticut has over 30 Israeli companies in the state. This past year, JFACT was part of a state-led business mission to Israel, focused on helping get even more Israeli companies to expand or to relocate to Connecticut. What would your administration do to build on this momentum? And would you commit to going to Israel in your 4-year term?
Absolutely. I'll commit to going in the first 6 months. I'll do even better than that. As you guys know better than I do, Israel is a hub of innovation. I mean, it's a Silicon Valley, and the entrepreneurship that you see over there. And I do applaud Governor Lamont for going over. I know he brought a bunch of companies with him. The more we can interact with some of the universities and compare notes and have startups over here. We've got some of the best colleges in the world. And Israel has some of the best companies in these spots in the world. I think we need to do it with other countries as well. I think sometimes we spend too much time within the borders of Connecticut, and there's a lot going on outside of here. And innovation is how we're going to stimulate this economy. You see it day after day with some terrific companies. I've actually worked with a few coming out of Israel. And I first 6 months after we win, you call me the day after we win, we'll get a group together, we'll go over there, because I really would like to do that.
Deal. Aiding refugees is part of our mission and responsibility in the Jewish community. In the current humanitarian crises in Afghanistan and Ukraine have impacted us profoundly. Jewish federations across the United States have raised north of $60 million to help Ukrainians alone. There are potentially 2,000 refugees who either are in or may be coming to Connecticut in the next handful of months. What would your administration do for these and other refugees in Connecticut?
Well, we have to welcome them. I think what some of these governors did in sending families to it's just disgusting. You don't want to play politics with families. It's not right. I actually went over to Poland. My family grew up in Poznan, Poland, and I went over in, I believe, March, April. We traveled up to the border, the Ukraine border, and just to see the people coming over the border, 20,000 people per day. And I remember it was around Easter, and I'd gotten 3 Easter bunnies I got 3 girls. I wanted them to see a Polish Easter bunny. It was chocolate. And this family came up. They had just driven across the border, and I gave them to those 3 girls, and you would have thought I gave them a diamond ring. So just to see the struggling they're going through, we did end up setting up a nursery school in Warsaw for African refugee families, and it was terrific for 2 reasons. Number one, it gave the kids an opportunity to interact with each other, get behind the tragedy a little bit, but it also gave the moms and the dads some time off. And at that time, a lot of the Ukraine were going to Warsaw and settling there. So just for them to get together and compare notes and realize that there's a bigger world out there. But we absolutely need to do things like that here in Connecticut. We've got thousands of vacant buildings on the books that the government owns that we could refurbish and create centers for kids and for adults. And it was amazing, the resilience, but it was also amazing the horror they had gone through. And just seeing the kids walking around was just amazing. It left an impression. It's one of those things that leaves an impression on you that you're never going to forget. So I will do everything I can to support the families that come here.
Thank you for that answer, Bob. The Jewish community cares deeply about taking care of vulnerable populations, whether the elderly or the disability community. What would a Stefanowski administration and your Department of Social Services, Department of Children and Families do to help, sorry for the siren in the background, do to help protect the safety net in those vulnerable populations?
Yeah, this is where it's unfortunate, the attack heads. Let me tell you where I sit on this. I grew up in New Haven. My dad worked at the phone company for 30 years. He didn't have 2 dimes, but he put me through public schools. He helped me be successful. I have a beautiful family. The reason I'm running is we should have that opportunity for more people. I think the difference in my approach is we need to provide subsistence payments and subsidy payments, but we also need to provide jobs. We need to get people to be independent. When I go to New Haven, nobody wants to not have a job. They all want jobs. We need to do a better job of providing that, for protecting the kids and the people that don't have jobs, but to provide the training. We have 1,000 open jobs in Connecticut. There are tremendous strides we could make with tech schools and training and other things to fit them and get the people to be self-dependent, help them, nurture them, support them, but the ultimate goal for them to be self-dependent so that they can have the opportunities that I had.
Well said. A question here from the audience. You went over this a little bit, but give you a chance to expand. How will you create new jobs in our state? And with the goal of cutting taxes, what services will you reduce or eliminate?
That's always I'm glad that was asked, because this is not about cutting services. This is possibly investing more in education than we already have. If you look at our $24 billion budget, the budget is up $4 billion in the last 4 years. I don't look around and see a lot of improvement. So it's about making sure that every agency is as efficient as it possibly can be. I was the chief financial officer of UBS, and we use something called zero-based budgeting, which is you start with a blank piece of paper and you only add back in what you need. And I've never seen a budget that didn't have 5% of inefficiency in it. 5% of Connecticut state budget is $1 billion that we can use on education. Also, the corruption you see, hundreds of millions of dollars of improper school construction payments alleged. The state pier, $200 million over budget. Imagine what we can do when we clamp down. The city of West Haven, $1 million of COVID money used to buy poker chips and marching bands. I'm going to make the state more efficient. I'm not going to cut education. I'm not going to cut medical assistance. I'm going to make it more efficient, and I'm going to invest that in things that matter.
Okay. I would like to give you, we are coming to the close of our rapid fire round. Appreciate certainly the time. Want to give you a moment. I mean, you certainly covered a lot, but would like to give you a minute or two to make some closing remarks.
Yeah. I guess I'd say this. If you honestly believe it's safer than it was 4 years ago, if you think education is better than it was 4 years ago, if you think infrastructure is better than it was 4 years ago, if you think hate crimes are less than they were 4 years ago, vote for my opponent. I mean, I can't say it any differently, but I don't think it's better. I've got a novel approach. You can look at my website, bob4governor.com, FOR governor. I know this sounds corny, but I'm a good guy. I'm not what the attack ads present. I grew up in New Haven. I'm a family guy. I've been married for 35 years, and I've got a new approach. And I think after 40 years of one approach, it's time. I know it's risky. I know you don't know me as well as my competitor. I know change is hard. But you got to look inside, look in that mirror in the morning and say, has the last 4 years really improved Connecticut? I don't think it has. I can make it better. I appreciate you at least listening to me tonight. And whether you vote for me or not, I'm going to support the heck out of you guys.
Well, we are very appreciative of you coming to speak to us. We are now joined by Democratic candidate for governor, Ned Lamont. Let's get started. Governor, would you please take a few minutes to give an opening statement? Please take it away.
Hey, Michael, nice to see you again. Good evening, everybody. I'll just say that 5 years ago, I thought the state was going through a world of hurt. We really hadn't added a new job in 30 years. We're flat as a pancake, young people leaving GE, chronic fiscal crisis. So that's why I threw my hat in the ring. First business leader to lead this state, really forever. First thing I thought we had to do was you have to get your fiscal house in order. That's true of a family, that's true of a business, that's true of a state. We hadn't done that in a while. It was tough that first year. We got the budget balanced. No broad-based tax increase. First governor in 4 years not to raise the income tax. It was balanced that year, balanced the next year. It's been balanced the last 2 years. We've been able to make big investments in daycare and childcare, and most importantly for me, workforce. I want this to be a state of opportunity. I'm not into handing out a lot of money to people, but I am into giving people opportunity. And what a difference some time is making. We now have about 115,000 jobs we're working to fill, and I'm trying to do everything I can to recruit and keep businesses right here in the state of Connecticut. That was one of the reasons, Michael, that you and I, we did that. First trade mission we did was to Israel, an amazing group. And as you remember, Israel really, we were the first state mission there, sort of post-COVID, if we're ever post-COVID. And I remember the number of businesses. It was a chance for me to boast about Connecticut a little bit and tell people that this is an incredibly diverse state, a large, loving, welcoming Jewish population. Had to remind everybody how close we were to Kennedy Airport. Remember that? Because, a lot of the new businesses coming to New York City, I said, we're nearby as well. I remember Bennett and Lapid, they both knew Southern Connecticut pretty well. One had been to summer camp in New Haven and able to just remind people when you're thinking about where you want to be, Connecticut is the place you ought to focus on. And we're continuing to grow that, continuing to grow jobs and keep this state moving again. And I think one of our great strengths as a state, and then I'll shut up, is our diversity and our Connecticut values. And our Connecticut values is respect for each other. I think our respect for each other was displayed, I think, very positively during COVID. We were the hardest hit, one of the three hardest hit states in the country, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. And we looked out for each other, and we ended up being the most vaccinated, least infected state. That's how we kept our business open. That's how we kept manufacturing open. That's how we kept our parks and beaches open. Tens of thousands of young families moved into the state of Connecticut. But I also think it was our values and the fact that we respect each other, we look out for each other, and we cherish our diversity. And I'll just say is, love is contagious and hate is contagious. And I've seen a lot of hate over the last 68 years. I've seen a lot of hate in the last couple years. I don't know, COVID opened up some wounds, and you see that reflected in anti-Semitism in particular, racism in general, and that's why you've got to be particularly strong and outspoken when you see hate, and make sure that Connecticut continues to lead by example. That's why you're on our hate crimes advisory group. That's why we're making the biggest investment in security for all of our not-for-profits, all of our religious institutions. But more importantly, it's making sure that people stand up and speak out when they see hate. And I think we've gotten a little casual about that. Maybe some of that was the coarsening of the political culture, Trump and all that. Maybe some of that is just the isolation, bringing out some of our demons over the last couple of years. But I think every day Connecticut continues to do better. You have my word that that's a priority for me. No more hate.
Thank you very much, Governor, for that statement and those words. As I said, we will focus, you already hit on some of them, quite frankly, on some of the issues affecting the Jewish community, but we'd like to give you a platform to speak more broadly about what your administration's priorities would be if you are given another 4 years as governor of the state of Connecticut. What would be 3 policy changes or 3 implementations your administration would make, again, if you were given another 4 years?
I'm doing everything I can to get people back to work and grow this economy. As I said before, we've been flat as a pancake for 30 plus years. I say that in the sense of when I say I want daycare, affordable daycare for everybody, that's to give that kid the very best opportunity in life and also allow mom and dad to get back to work. We provide free public transportation in our cities. We'll see how long we can keep that going. We started that during COVID. It allows you to get to work. It allows you to get a skill you need. You know, we've made a community college debt-free. We're expanding workforce development tenfold over the last couple of years. And that means that not everybody is a 2-year, 4-year college or PhD. Sometimes a 18-week certificate program allows you to be an IT specialist, allows you to be a laser welder or electric boat. And that I say that for 2 reasons. One, electric boat says if I can't get the necessary laser welders, maybe we're going to have to make parts of the submarine elsewhere. So I say I've got to keep this state moving. That means the growth. But it also is about opportunity, Michael. It's a chance really to lift everybody up. A lot of folks who have been left behind, going back in many cases, generations, regardless of zip code, regardless of background. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity to really give people that opportunity. And that's what my focus is over the last few years and for the next 4 years.
The well-documented rise in anti-Semitism is the biggest issue impacting the Jewish community. Incidents are occurring daily, unfortunately, across the state and country. Hate groups have leafleted several towns in Connecticut recently. At least 3 anti-Semitic incidents were reported on American college campuses last week during Rosh Hashanah, and that doesn't include one that happened at a local college a few days ago. What would your administration continue to implement or start new to help combat anti-Semitism in the state of Connecticut?
Well, we talked about the tens of millions we've got in terms of security. I could talk about getting those illegal guns off the street, but I really want to talk about hate. And you see it in many cases in folks you never expected. You thought this genie was away, and it's never away unless you speak out every day when you see it. You mentioned what's going on the college campuses, what you see going on at Berkeley. What you see, it's demonstrable. And you need the leadership, starting with me, starting with the university presidents, and starting with the students. You know, I talk to the students. I go to the students every day. I say, I can only do so much as you're a governor. I also need you to take the lead. I need you to stand up. When you hear that little thing that some jerk thinks is funny, but you know how hurtful it can be, you speak up when you see that. And then more formally, when you see some of these organizations saying Jews not welcome, you know, you've got to be outraged and shocked by that. I can talk about rules and regulations and coming down like a ton of bricks on that, but really the best is what you're able to do organically as well. I do believe that Connecticut continues to lead by example. I think, during lots of different examples of racism, you saw what happened in George Floyd case a few years ago, and there were, lots of fights and battles and riots and arrests, but not in Connecticut. We did look out for each other. We took care of each other in a way that I think lowered the temperature and made a difference. You've been on the forefront of this. I need your help. I need the rabbis, but more importantly, I need the people of Connecticut to understand this is Connecticut. We're not going to let it happen here, not on our watch. And just as an aside, go visit Yad Vashem. I'm an old WASP, and we did that together. And it was the most, moving moment of my life. I think you know that. I think you can't airbrush the past. I hear a lot of this critical race theory stuff, and you're spending too much time on the Holocaust, and really you're overemphasizing slavery. No, you're not. Our kids are not snowflakes. In Israel, you go see Yad Vashem. In Germany, you go to Dachau, and you learn from that. And I think that is a core piece of what it is in our curriculum, a core piece of what it is to be American, to make sure you know what our history is. You learn from it every day. People aren't feeling guilty. I think they're inspired to do the right thing.
Thank you. As a result, you already mentioned the nonprofit security grant program. To date, $10 million has been dedicated to that program. If you were given another 4 years, would you continue to fund additional dollars for this statewide security grant program?
I think I'd follow the lead of our Hate Crimes Commission and tell me where you think the dollars are best impacted. Is it cameras, patrol, police, in just to deter crime in front of a, let's say in a synagogue? What we're doing in our schools. Your schools have multiple entrances. We're trying to consolidate that, make that easier. I was at a school the other day, Michael, it just killed me. The names of all the classrooms were stenciled on the outside of the school. In case there was an incident, police would know how to respond and where to respond. But the bottom line is public safety is in part law and order. Public safety is in part securing our buildings, as you say, securing our synagogues, securing all of our places that are the most vulnerable, especially vulnerable to hate crimes. And security is also looking out for each other.
You did bring up Yad Vashem and Holocaust education, which is perfect for this next question of clearly education, Holocaust education specifically is a key to combating anti-Semitism. What would your Department of Education or what would the continuation of a Lamont administration do to get more Holocaust education in front of students? Holocaust education is in this hyper-politicized climate we're in. Topics like Holocaust education are being deemed controversial. And for example, in Texas, there's a state law requiring the teaching of opposing sides of historical events, including the Holocaust. So what would your administration do in the next 4 years to get more Holocaust education in front of students?
What the hell is the other side? I mean, we start reading Mein Kampf. I don't know what that means. I'll say, I think we're a nation of refugees. Let me just pull the lens back a little bit, Michael. And it's about Holocaust education, but it's about people who came to this country, be it from Israel, be it from Italy, be it Native Americans, be it African Americans. And everybody says, why are you teaching all these, different pieces of history? And I say, because this is American history, and this is who we are as Americans. And Holocaust education is not just for Jewish kids, just like African American history is not just for Black kids. It is for all of us. This is our history. And as I said before, there's a disturbing trend out there to start airbrushing our history. And a lot of that's playing out in our boards of education. And I would urge each and every one of you, stay involved with your boards of education. That's how parents have input and insight into what's going on in their schools. And but don't shy away from teaching kids the full complement of what our history is, because they'll be better for it.
As you already alluded to, I was part of a state-led business mission to Israel with you in February. If you were given another 4 years, how would you keep this momentum going? And would you commit to going again to help get those companies over here and tap into that innovation?
Look, I'll do whatever it takes to keep this state growing and maintain our close relationship with Startup Nation, the most entrepreneurial nation in the world. That's Israel. Just to back up a little bit, I'll tell you, we went there, historically, little Connecticut hires a lobbyist. They say, hey, if you're thinking about your company, I know you know about New York, why don't you think about Connecticut? And maybe a couple come and take a look. We did it totally different, Michael. You were right there. We had some of our leading businesses come, and they were able to tell people what's going on in Connecticut when it comes to fintech and life sciences and advanced manufacturing. Instead of a lobbyist, we said, we're putting money into some of the venture capital firms in Israel. So those leading venture capitalists, when they're thinking about onloading into the United States and getting part of a bigger market, they want a place that they know is friendly to friendly Israeli companies. Connecticut is now top of mind going forward. So the answer is yes, 1,000 times over. Anything I can to keep that relationship going and blossoming, I'm there.
Wonderful, thank you. Aiding refugees is part of our mission and responsibility in the Jewish community. And the current humanitarian crises in Afghanistan and Ukraine have impacted us profoundly. Jewish federations across the United States have raised north of $60 million alone to help Ukrainians. There are potentially 2,000 refugees who are in or may be coming to Connecticut. What would your administration do for these and other refugees in Connecticut?
Do the same as we've done for a number of other refugee disasters. We brought in a number of Afghanis. That was complicated, working with other Afghani families. Puerto Rico, after now it's Fiona, before previous hurricanes, what we could do to welcome people here. And when it comes to Ukrainians, you're right. Believe it or not, Michael, we have hundreds of families right now who have said, sign me up. If a Ukrainian family is coming fleeing, Putin, who I consider a mass murderer, we want them here in the state of Connecticut. We welcome here in the state of Connecticut. My family will welcome them here until they get on their feet, get them introduced to other Eastern European, Ukrainian families. We've done a lot in the greater New Britain area with Little Poland. So we've got an on-ramp ready to go. We did during the worst of COVID, we did find a number of our hotels that weren't very busy for reasons you understand. We converted them as housing for congregate care. Now we can use them as well for some of the refugees as they get back on their feet, get their kids in school, make sure that they know Connecticut's a place that they can call home. That's what Connecticut's all about. And I believe that's what America's all about. But we're a little playing defense sometimes on that these days, aren't we?
Along the same lines of protecting refugees and protecting vulnerable populations, the Jewish community cares deeply about protecting vulnerable populations, whether it be elderly, the disability community. What would another 4 years the Lamont administration do to help protect the safety net? And then I have a follow-up question on regarding safety net in a minute. But how would you help make sure people don't fall through?
I think we learned or relearned, during COVID, that taking care of the most vulnerable in our society is doing the right thing for them and giving everybody the dignity and respect and the opportunity they deserve. It's also key to our public health. If you're homeless and unvaccinated, it's dangerous for you and it's dangerous for the greater community. So I think we learned, I hope a lot of people relearned why the words "we're in this together" have a special meaning, especially after 2.5 years of COVID, and why we paid special attention to the most vulnerable, for them and for our greater community. And I'd like to say something else. You mentioned the folks with special needs and disabilities. A lot of people are really down on state government. Remember, they retired at 55 and lean on a mop and they really don't work that hard. I'd like to think that after 2.5 years of COVID, you saw those nurses who showed up every day, not just in the hospital room, but taking care of those folks with special needs and special disabilities, and did that without question. And we didn't know what was going on, right? And we were getting the masks and trying to get the vaccinations and showed up every day. So it's also a matter of taking care of them and be able to say thank you for the incredibly hard work that they did as well.
So with that, I will let you make a closing statement to the audience for a few minutes. Please take it away.
Well, I think Connecticut was suffering a real crisis of confidence going back some years. It was reflected in budgets. It was reflected in jobs leaving. It was reflected in our kids leaving the state. And they've started calling me Ned Lasso, as in Ted Lasso, somebody who believes in this state, wants you to believe in this state as well. And I think we made incredible strides in terms of getting our fiscal house in order, getting jobs, growing jobs, training people for these jobs, and lifting people up and give them opportunity. But I'll say something else particularly relevant to our audience here. It's also about Connecticut values. I really do believe that. I believe that we celebrate our diversity, and we know that we're better and stronger for it. And those principles you see in the Statue of Liberty still have a special meaning for the people of Connecticut. And I say this to, the Jewish community, and I say this to all of our communities who are part of the Connecticut family. I continue to want Connecticut to lead by example here. And I want you to tell your friends far and wide. They see a lot of the stuff going on in universities and the anti-Semitism and the violence, and say we're trying to get it right in Connecticut every day. And I'd like to think Connecticut is a laboratory for democracy, a laboratory for values. We lead by example, and starts with the Jewish community. You have always led by example. Michael, I love what the Federation does. I love what the questions you're asking me about the most vulnerable, questions you're asking me about hate, questions you're asking me about how going forward we make sure we live up to our ideals. That's what I'm trying to do, and that's what we're trying to do together, my friend.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for the time. With that, this will come to a close. For those interested, our next candidate forum is this Thursday between George Logan and Johanna Hayes, who are competing for the 5th Congressional District. Hope everybody has an easy and meaningful fast. Take care, and thank you for joining.